Okay, now we are going to see set matrix 0. Question number 73 on Leetcode. So let's read the questions. First. See. Okay, let's start the timer. So now let's read the question. Given an M cross N matrix, integer matrix, if an element is 0, matrix dot length. So row and column will be constraints. Rows and columns will be lesser than 200. And matrix element value will be 2 to the power of 23. Okay. Constraints. So if any element is 0, then make the row and column of that particular place to be full 0. Okay, I understand. Okay. So we have a matrix element 152630493. Now we have to make, so again the brute force solution would be first traversing through the whole matrix and finding where are all we have zeros. Okay, So, and uh, first of all, we will brute force solution would be we will loop through the whole matrix and find where we have zeros. And let's say we have zeros here and here. We will have the column name and row name of this, and then column name P. So in this case, 052 630 493. This is our matrix. If we take rows and column of the first zero, then 1 comma 1. And the second zero would be 3 comma 2. So we now know that first row, first column and third column, and then first row and then second row should full be having uh, filled. So 9 will only remain. So and then what we will do is that we will put an if else statement. If row is this or that, then put 0. And then we will again loop through the whole array. And then we will leave the items as it is that doesn't satisfy the if else condition. Okay, that is what brute force solution would be. But that would be how much? That is actually 2n, right? We are looping through the array 2 times. Um, but here we need to store how many zeros are. Wait, if we are looping through this 2 times, then it is n only. So that would probably be an optimal approach. Uh, Or else what can we do is that if we find a zero in a row, mm, but I don't think we can do it in a single loop, because in a single loop, if you detect a zero and if you make all the columns and rows as zero, if another zero is present at the same column as this zero, then that will get hidden by the zero that you put afterwards. And then while you traverse and you come again, reach the second zero, then you cannot make the rows and columns zero based on the second zero that you found, because that zero will be hidden in the extra zeros that you put based on the first zero. So I think definitely optimal, is optimal or not, I don't know. But definitely we need to loop it twice. But looping it once or twice doesn't matter, because anyways it is big of n only. And also we have to store the key value. Sorry, not rows and column. I mean, we have to store all the positions of zero. So for that, what do we need? We have to store two values per zero. If we create an array that contains zero values, then that will probably, then we need to whether check while going to each element. We need to check whether uh, the array contains that row and column or not. That we cannot do. Uh, if we cannot store this in array, Then what can we do? Let's say they are giving, I think we have to use some hash map. If we store a row number as a key and then column number as value, then also if we want to access the column number means the internal implementation of hash map will get O of n times just to get the value or just to check whether the value exists or not. So that is not a, maybe if you deduct a zero, then you should, after going through, if let's say you are deducting a zero in an, when you are traversing through a row, let's say you are deducting a zero, then what you will do after traversing through the whole row, you will set the whole row to be zero and you will remember the column. Okay. And then similarly, you will traverse through the whole. And then we should remember the column number. And then after traversing, while traversing the row, if you deduct some zero, then you should remember it. And then you should traverse after finishing the whole row. You should make the whole root be 0. While, but before finishing the row, you detect another 0 in the same row. Then you just have to remember its column. So like that, what we are going to do is we are going to make all the rows. We are going to make all the rows to be zeros as we go, but we are going to make columns to be 0 as we uh, but the elements values can be very high or very low, but we don't care. The matrix size at max would be 200 is to 200, which means how many elements? 200 into 200 is 40,000 elements at max. So at max, we will do 40,000 iterations. And actually, the element value doesn't matter because we are going to only compare whether we are going to make the condition whether it is equal to 0 or not. That's it. So the actual matrix value is not a matter. So they are telling we must do it in place. Follow-ups. A straightforward solution using M and space is probably a bad idea. M and space. A simple improvement uses M plus M space, but still not the best solution. Would you devise a constant space solution? A straightforward solution using M and straightforward solution. What is the straightforward solution? M into n iteration. Oh, space they are telling. Okay. So what they are telling us a straightforward solution would be creating another matrix. I doubt how that solution also will come. Create another matrix. That is what M cross N space. Then what we should do? So I am thinking of the straightforward solution itself. What would be the straightforward solution? So they probably don't care about time complexity because the element is like time complexity depends on how many elements we have, and space complexity depends on that. Space complexity also depends on how many elements we have, but it is more important when your values are very high. So here they are giving 2 to the power of 31. So when our values are very high, each and every value that you replace will occupy a lot of space. So your time complexity can be anything, but you should optimize for your space complexity. I think a hash table, no, set will work. Okay, wait. In set, oh, set, okay. To avoid repetitive rows and column, we can add set. But the problem is in the set, you can have only one value. So you cannot add both row and column. But what I thought is we can create two sets. And the first zeros row will be on the first set, second, and first zeros column will be on this second set. So rows, all zeros row will be on the first set and column will be on the second set. But the column and row will be mixed since the set is not ordered, guaranteed to be not ordered. Uh, the set, since we don't have a guarantee that the set is ordered, it is. I thought we cannot do that, but now I have the idea that we don't actually need whether a particular zeros column and row in pair. Many zeros particular column and row can be mixed. Not, it's not a problem because at the end we have to make all the columns zero, all the rows zero. So even if the columns of this first zero and second zero mixes, it's not a problem, I think so. Um, Actually, I don't know the straightforward solution. So I know, yeah, O of M into N, they are creating another matrix. In another matrix, they are iterating through this matrix. And if an element is equal to zero, but still you need the coordinates of all the zeros and ones, right? I don't wait. Yeah. So if you have another matrix, you can go look through a row. If that row contains zero, you can again look through the row and then uh, make it all zero. And then you can go to another row and then you should look through the row. If you find zero, you should again look through the row and then make all the elements zero. So that is maybe one of the thing. And the second, So if we have to make a little bit, if we don't have to make another matrix, we can create two hash set, one for row, one another for column, and then we can traverse through the loop once, through the whole matrix once, and then we can store the rows and columns of the zeros present there on the rows and on the row hash set and the column hash set. And if some zero more than one zero appear in the same row or the same column, since it is a hash set, so repeated numbers will be cancelled. So here you have a zero word, first row, first column, and then you have a zero at first row, fourth column. So first row, fourth column. So first row is same. And then you have zero at second row, third column. So second row, third column. And then you have zero at fourth row, third column. So what this will do is that while iterating, it will check this with in a row, it will check whether the row is 2, 1, 2 or 4. And while iterating column, each column it will check contains key. Since contains key is O of 1, so it doesn't take any time complexity. So it will check this, and then uh, if it contains, then it will make this thing. So we will have first column, fourth column, third column, and then first row, second row, fourth row. So still we have 9 as our answer. Okay, this is our improved approach. First uh, was like very brute force one, creating another matrix, and then after you loop through and row, if you find a zero, then make the whole row a zero and remember the column. In a honestly, actually, I don't get the straightforward solution. Okay, the improved solution I got. And then the optimal solution could be constant space. So in place. In place, how would we do this? So let's see, this is 5396 2083 7496 1420. That is our 4 cross 4 array. So in place, how we will change it? Okay, wait. So since we have only 200 rows and 200 columns, that is 40,000, our um our wait, max to max. The number is 40,000. So n square, 40,000 into 40,000 is how much? 200 crore. No, 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 no. Our solution must not contain n square. It should be n and one space. Either it should be n log n or it should be n and then one space because n square is going lakhs and lakhs. So either n log n, kind of like that. Um, and constant space. So what should we do? The problem is that you cannot make zeros from star. So first of all, the moment we detect zero, what should we do? If we want to make changes in place, and I have also have to remember the fact that I can also use two for loops because 2n time complexity is also considered as n time complexity. So I can use two for loops or three, even four for loops, but I should never use a nested for loops. That will cause n square. So what should I do? space complexity is 0. So any other information that we need to carry, what will we do? Okay, what we can do is int row equal to 0. We will make a variable row, we can make a variable column called. And now, whenever we will loop through the array as usual, okay, and whenever we detect a 0, what we will do is we will store the row and column value in that variable, and then we will go to an inside nested loop only. But wait, what we will do is we will traverse through the whole row, and if we find another 0, we have to store column here. The problem is that if there is two zeros in the same row or two zeros in the same column, then when you deduct the first zero and make all the elements zero, then the second zero will be hidden, like completely vanished. We will not get any information about that. But even if we take the information of the second zero, we have to store it somewhere. But we have constant space solution. So I am already storing a row and column of the first zero in two variables. If I have to store the second zeros thing, then I need more space, so it will not be constant space. Okay. So what should I actually do? Okay. So time since time is over, we will see the first hint. First hint is that if any cell of the matrix has a zero, we can record its row and column number using additional memory. But if you don't want to use extra memory, then you can manipulate the array instead. That is simulating exactly what the question says. But if you don't want to use extra memory, you can manipulate the array instead. That is simulating exactly what the question says. Okay, let's see what are the topics. Hash table, matrix, hash table. Yeah, hash map is. But why do you need hash map? Hash map can only store one variable. Hash set. Yeah. Okay, but for the most optimal solution, uh, set its entire do exactly what the question says. Uh, Recursion? No, 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 no. Okay, let's say we are finding a 0 at 2, comma 2. And then you are starting from the second row. From starting you are coming in the nested loop and you are making all the elements 0 one by one by one by one. And when you come to the last element, you find another 0. So now what you do is that you have to make the last column 0 and the second row 0. You already made the second row 0. So what you do is you go from the start from the column and you make all the column zeros. Okay. But this sounds like a problem of recursion. And then you set all the columns of the second 0 to 0, 0, 0. And when you deduct a 0, then stop there. Not wait. Okay. So let's create a variable where you are looking to here. Okay. So you are storing this. Now you are moving all the rows to be. You are storing the as what? And then you are storing. If you find a 0, you store its column. What is its column? 4. And then you make all the elements 0. Oh, if you find another 0, oh shit. That's a problem. Okay, I don't know. Let's see hint 2. Yeah, I thought we can use some other integer value as a marker, but the same integer value can be anywhere, right? Oh, okay, okay. Setting cell values to zero on the fly, on the fly, while iterating might lead to discrepancies. What if you use some other integer value as your marker? There is still a better approach for this problem. With the, what they are telling is that, let's say you encounter 1 0. So loop through the you store the row and column in a variable, and then you loop through the row fully to make it 0. And while making 0, if you ever find a place where there is another 0 in the same row, then you make it as 1 or 2 or -1 or some other value. And then you continue making all other rows 0. And then you make the same column 0. And in the while making all the column 0, if you encounter any another 0 in the column, you will make it as some other number that you define. And you do that. Um, and after coming from that loop, you will see whether there is one or not. If there is one, then you will make column as your this thing. Okay, let's see in 3. We could have used two sets. That is what I came with better solution, two sets. What are they telling us that when you encounter the first 0, okay, remember it's row and remember it's column, okay, and make that full row and full column 0. Okay, no, 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 you don't have to make 0 now. And now when you encounter another 0, okay, what you are going to do is that when you encounter another 0 in the column, what you are going to do is you are going to make the first element, the row, to be the column, the second occurrence of 0, and the first element of the column to be the first occurrence of 0. So what this hint is trying to tell is that instead of when you encounter the first zero, you will have a row and column. So instead of putting the row and column to full zero, then you will lose all the information. We can use, we can store the row and column number in two separate variable and store our values like the other zeros, rows and column values in this row and column. And we can, whenever we want, we can retrieve from this. And at last, we can make all this row and column, we can make this particular row and column full zero. That's what they're doing. Hmm. So I think we can have a count of how many zeros we have encountered. Okay. So, oh, I don't understand. Bye bye.